الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون صدق الله العظيم. My respected elders and brothers, mothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We come upon another week of Tafseer with Mikaeel, and we know that we have already completed the Surah Fatiha, and with that as well, we are now doing the Surah Baqarah, the beginning of Surah Baqarah. And we talked about Surah Baqarah, its virtues, and the reason why it's been called what it's called. And the first, ayat, Alif Lam Mim Dhalika al-Kitabu la rayba fihi hudal lil-muttaqin. We spoke in our previous tafsirs about that. The muttaqin, the God-fearing, we are talking about their qualities. Alladhina yu'minuna bil-ghayb. They are the ones who believe in the unseen. Wa yuqimuna as-salah. And that's where basically we stopped at. Yuqimuna as-salat. We are now talking about the fact that they establish prayer, and we wanted to stop a little bit. We've done that in half of the tafsir before, the whole tafsir before, and about half or a quarter of the tafsir before that, spending time about what is establishment of prayer and the wisdom of prayer. And these type of ayat verses will come out throughout the Quran. Yuqimun as-salat, iqamat as-salat, fa'aqimu as-salah. So we'll cover it here, and then later on, when we do those type of verses, we will not cover it there. Any points that we can make, and sometimes Allah Ta'ala chooses to say it before or after certain verses. So there's certain wisdoms in why Allah Ta'ala says it, and there's of course other ayats and other aspects of salat which are talked about in Quran. But when we speak about iqamat as-salat, I will refer you back to this lesson and the lesson before about iqamat as-salah. We talked last week a little bit about the salat and its wisdoms. And the first thing a person does is have intention. The salat, we talked about wudu also. That was something we talked about in pretty good detail. And then last time we ended off on salat and its wisdom. And one thing that's important is we know from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that markaz and the center point of our body is our heart. And this salat, since it has to do with intention, the first thing you have to have is a good intention, the intention to worship Allah Ta'ala. So the heart and its aspirations are focused and put to test at least 5 times a day. There's a focus on what our intention is in our heart. In the form of salat, that happens. As Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى. That those people are successful who have purified themselves. Obviously, purification, one of the first avenues and first ways, and the first way for us to purify ourselves is our intention. Actually, it's the first thing we have to do, because we can have a plethora and a variety of a'mal and good deeds, but we know if the intention is not good, those good deeds will not purify us on the day of Qiyamah, and they won't be able to help us. The asl and the origin and the basis of all of our good deeds is intention. And the salat, it really emphasizes on intention. It's such a clear ibadah and clear worship. There may be other things that we do where we're wishy-washy on our intentions, and that can happen. For example, taking a shower. A ghusl is an ibadah in Islam, taking a shower. But because we do it for work and we do it for there's a possibility that we don't have intentions for that, just out of the way the shower and the nature of the shower is. You really have to be paying attention to realize that it's something that I can get, rewards for. A ghusl, or shower, we call in Islam a ghusl. Sometimes the intentions are not there. Even the bathroom, we get in there and we forget about, making any intentions or anything. But salat, once we start our prayer, it's such an action, it's such a clear ibadah and clear worship of Allah Ta'ala, that, right away, our intentions and what's lurking in our heart, and how and what we are intending when we pray that, it puts right to test. And we talked a little bit about takbiri tahrima right after the intention. That thing that we make things haram on ourselves. You know, we're saved from the sins when we engage ourselves in the salat. That's why takbir tahrima, we're making takbir and we're saying Allahu Akbar, and we are making things haram on ourselves that normally are halal. For example, speaking and eating and regular normal things, turning around from side to side, walking, sleeping, sitting. These things are haram for us in salat, as long as we're in the salat. So takbir tahrima makes many things that are halal haram. Obviously, the things are forbidden, which are forbidden already. And the same way that Hajj has that same aspect with the ihram, where we're making things haram on ourselves. Ramadan, the fasting throughout the day, which is coming up in a couple of months. We have our fasting, which makes a lot of halal things haram. We can't eat, we can't drink, which right now we can eat and drink. I got my water with me. So this practice that we have through our ibadah and our worship of forcing us into a situation and forcing into a spiritual condition where we are now forced to, and it's compelling us to stay away from forbidden things, that is now giving us practice of our normal state where we are not compelled to stay away from haram, but inshallah through these ibadat and worship, it will now give us a taste of staying away from forbidden things and show to us, the proof is in the pudding, that we can stay away from forbidden things out of salat and out of hajj and out of fasting. It's not something which is impossible. We can do it. So we talked also about a beautiful point that some of the ulama say about takbir, that first of all, hands up, surrender. So it's kind of like showing that a person is surrendering to Allah Ta'ala. And even ulama go even deeper and say that when a person lifts up his hands to his ears and says Allahu Akbar, he actually is tossing dunya, the world, behind him, and he is now putting in front of him Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which in the Quran also mentions after قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. Insan is such that he gives preference to the dunya, but the hereafter it is much, much more better and more enduring. So here we can say that after the person remembers his Lord, the first thing that comes in front of him is the dunya, and in salat we eliminate that dunya and we enter into the realm and into the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we realize through the salat that the akhirat is actually something we should prefer over the dunya. And obviously the reason, because it's abaqa, it's more enduring. This dunya, what's in it and what we have, and we have a lot of things already in our possession which we hate. Why? Because we've had it for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. We don't even look at it. We don't even like it anymore. We bought it, or we purchased it, or we got it from someone as a gift. We loved it and we cherished it. Now we can't even look at it. This is the aspect, and this is the nature of the dunya. It's something that is temporary and something that will finish. مَا عِنْدُكُمْ يَنْفَدْ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. Whatever's by you, it's going to finish and perish. Whatever's by Allah Ta'ala will endure and remain. Moving on to a new lesson in regards to salat. Now we look at the hikmah, because after we do takbir and after we do our salat, there's something which we call qiyam, standing in front of Allah Ta'ala. And each thing has its wisdom. Allah Ta'ala has chosen for us a very, very original and very beautiful salat. And actually, it's a mixture of all of the previous ummats and previous nations, the salat they had. Our ulama have said that some of the nations from before maybe only had prostration, some of them maybe only had bowing, some of them had sitting on the floor, some of them had just standing, some of them closed their hands. Different nations had different forms of prayer, but this nation of Islam and the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they have all of these different maneuvers and different methods and modes in the prayer. All of them have been put together into one beautiful, expression of ibadah and worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the first thing that we do is what we call qiyam. And the qiyam itself, it signifies obedience and respect for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obedience and respect. Uh, like a person stands in respect for elders, or we stand, in front of someone who's respectful in front of us, standing as a sign of respect. We stand in salat also as an expression of respect and awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another aspect of and wisdom of qiyam and standing is there is a great struggle and disobedience to our desires and tendencies toward laziness when we stand. Because the desires, it has tendencies towards laziness. It wants to be lazy, it doesn't want to stand. And we struggle as well, and a very important aspect in all of our lives, and something that we can never ever achieve greatness in this world in regards to dunya, and even in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worshipping Him. There's the aspect of what we call mujahada, where we have to struggle against our desires. We have to do it for work. I know a lot of us. I know I'm like that, and I teach in an Islamic school. I got to teach books, and it's a beautiful job that I have. But still, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes you got to get up for work. You don't want to get up, and you struggle to do different things. And sometimes I struggled to come here, and I couldn't make it last week because of a certain reason. I was traveling, but we struggled to come here, and so we don't want to do things. A lot of us, we're lazy. Some Allah Ta'ala has put in their nature to be, enthusiastic about everything, and they work hard. But the majority, we're lazy, and we'd rather just be sitting doing nothing. So there's a great, great tendency towards laziness, which comes from our desires. So when we stand up, we struggle against, and we disobey our desires. There are even some ulama who have chosen to deem qiyam and standing as the most virtuous of all the positions of prayer, because of the aspect of struggle and difficulty. Actually, it was the view of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, that the qiyam is the afdal and the best position because of mujahada, because of struggle. It's the hardest part. And the hadith of Muslim, which is in Sahih Muslim, bears testimony to this view of Abu Hanifa, where Su'ila Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah was asked, Ayyu salati afdal? Which salat is the most virtuous, the most best? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Tulul qunut. And in another hadith, which is related in the Sunan of Abu Dawood, the book of Abu Dawood, where he says actually the word Tulul qiyam. Exactly the word. Qunut also means qiyam here also. That prayer which has very, very long standing in it. So it's an incredible, thing how we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha in regards to the standing all night of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even one of the first things Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Stand in the night except for a small portion of the night. And the ulama have mentioned in Tafseer, and hopefully one day we'll get to that surah, where the first method of training, like a soldier trains, and he goes through some first trainings in order to get him ready in the battlefield, or give him endurance on the battlefield. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was put through a regimen and put through a exercise schedule of ibadah and worship. And what was the thing that was given to him in order for him to get ready? It was the standing up in the night. قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا نِصْفَهُ أَوْ انْقُصْ مِنْهُ قَلِيلًا. And there's a whole discussion about the beginning of Islam, how Rasulullah would stand up and the Sahaba would stand all night in the worship of Allah Ta'ala. And the reason, إِنَّ لَكَ فِي النَّهَارِ صَبَحًا طَوِيلًا. In the daytime, you have a very long struggle. The only way you're going to get through that is now to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The difficulties that we get from dealing with the people and in the ta'alluqat, the relationships that we have with the people, which sometimes can be very, very difficult on us. And it can cause us to have depression, especially if we're dealing with the problems of people. Somebody's getting divorced, somebody's dying, some child is dying. People are getting bombarded with war. And people who are in the social effort, and we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in the social effort. He was dealing with the problems of the women of the community, the problems of the men of the community, the children of the community, everything he was dealing with. And how do you deal with such a thing? They say the psychiatrist needs to see a psychiatrist just to get his mind straight and to make sure that he's not going insane from hearing all the problems of people. So there's nothing like that in Islam. What we do is we establish our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That will keep us sane. And we stand up in front of Allah ta'ala and we worship Him. So Qiyam is something that is a very, very virtuous thing which has been mentioned in the hadith also. Qiyam also is a farz of our prayer. It's one of the 6 fara'id, one of the 6 obligations and on us in prayer that we have to do. If we don't stand, and of course if we leave standing with excuse, that's a different story. But if we don't stand just out of nothing, we just want to sit down and that's it. So our prayer can be invalid. Qiyam, you have to stand if you're able to. And the protection of our prayer also is dependent on it. Allah Ta'ala talks about it in the Quran in Surah Baqarah later on in Ayah 238. Hafidhu ala salawat was salat al-wusta. Protect all your prayers and make sure you protect the middle prayer, which most of the ulama say, which is Asr. Asr prayer is that prayer that comes in between going home from work, 4, 5 o'clock. It's always a challenging prayer, especially to get in the masjid, especially to do it properly, with all the different things that are bombarding us with our normal lives. So Asr is a very, very challenging prayer. Allah Ta'ala mentions it, especially was Salatul Wusta. Be careful about the Salatul Wusta. Nabi Sallallahu has mentioned especially about the Asr, that when the person misses the Asr Salat, فَكَأَنَّمَا وُتِرَ أَهْلُهُ وَمَالُهُ. It's as if that person came home and, he missed the prayer. The missing of the prayer, he should be so sad. And it's such a tragedy in that person's life to miss any prayer, but to miss the Asr Salat. Man fatatu Salat al-Asr. The person who misses the Salat al-Asr, it is such a tragedy in that person's life. It's as if that person came home and all of his family have died and all of his wealth has been, burned to the ground and finished. It's like this. And we know that's a terrible situation. Allah protect us and our families and our wealth. And Allah Ta'ala says that وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Out of all the aspects of prayer, Allah Ta'ala says, and stand in obedience to Allah Ta'ala. Qumu. A person's supposed to stand in the prayer. That's why the ulama say that from this ayat, that standing in the prayer shows here, Allah Ta'ala shows that the hifadat and the protection of our prayer lies in standing for prayer also. And it's one of the first farad and one of the first obligatory acts that we have in our prayer that we're going to do. And when we talked about qiyam, we talk about also the way we stand in line also. The sufuf, the lines of people who stand in the masjids when they stand together. And Allah Ta'ala has not chosen that, we sit down in rows, or one stand over there and one stand over there, or standing behind each other. No. We stand in line, side to side, shoulder to shoulder. And actually, this is how the angels of Allah Ta'ala worship, who Allah Ta'ala calls Akram. They are the most honorable of Allah Ta'ala's creation. Kiraman Katibin. Very honorable scribes, honorable angels who are worshiping Allah Ta'ala. And Allah Ta'ala has chosen that we are like them in our worship. We worship in the same method and same mode as Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned in the Hadith of Muslim. He asked the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, "Ala tasufun kama tasufun malaika?" Won't you form your lines like the malaika and angels form their lines in the Rabbiha, by their Lord? The Sahaba said, "Of course." But how do the malaika form their lines in front of the angels? Then the Nabi Sallallahu said, they fulfill and they complete the line al-awwal, the first line, وَيَتَرَاسُونَ فِي الصَّفْ, and they stay close together in the sufuf, inside the prayer. They're not separating themselves, that one stands over there, one stands over there, shoulders together, and praying together. This is the way that the angels used to pray. So standing and also the qiyam and also the sufuf, standing in lines, is a very significant and important part of our prayer. And after we stand for a little while and recite the Quran in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah, Surah Fatiha, and also a surah which we add on to that, we go into a second mode and position of our prayer, and that is ruku, bowing. So standing and then we bow. And ruku actually is one of the most humbling positions in the prayer. And it is the middle point of the servant completely humbling himself before his Lord. This is he's going down and down and down, coming to complete humility. So this is kind of the middle point of it. Standing, while it's an honorable position where Allah Ta'ala is honored and the servant struggles against his desires because of the pains of standing, but the humility of insan, the humility of this human being, and a more specific expression of obedience and honor of Allah is in the bowing, or what we call ruku. Because of how significant this position of prayer is, Allah has referred even the entire prayer by just mentioning it in the Quran. Allah Ta'ala mentions, وَرْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. Allah Ta'ala tells all of us that bow with the people who are bowing. Right? Actually means what? وَصَلُّوا مَعَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. Pray with the people who are praying, which in Arabic we call ذِكْرُ الْجُزْ وَيُرِيدُ الْكُلْ. Allah Ta'ala here is not just saying make ruku, that just run to the masjid and bow with them and after that run out. No. If you're going to bow, you got to do the whole prayer. But when Allah Ta'ala wants to show the ahmiyat and the importance of something, He will mention that thing by mentioning only a part of it, but actually meaning the whole thing. So Allah says, وَرْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. Bow with those people who are bowing. And this is why when we go down, we are saying what? Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, which means Allah is pure and He's the Almighty. The humility of insan as he's going down, he says that Allah Ta'ala is Almighty. Ya Allah, I'm bending before you. I'm bowing before you. I have no might at all. I'm in a defenseless position. I'm in a very, very disgraceful position that would be something I could never do in front of anybody else except for He who's Azim and except for He who is the most Almighty. And that's the reason why I bow before you, because you are the Almighty and I am dependent on you. Now, ruku in itself, we've talked about now its wisdom, but the method of ruku is also very important. Many of us make great mistakes in this portion of our prayer. One is the ruku itself. When we are making ruku, our back must be as straight as possible when bowing. What we call a 90-degree angle must be like this. Right? Let's say this is the back, this is our head, and the back must be like this. And of course, with the ladies, because their salat is astar, they're covering up themselves more, and them in that position wouldn't be appropriate. So they can now, stretch their arms a little bit and fold their shoulders and do a lesser ruku. That's what's in for them in prayer. And one day, inshallah, we can have a little lesson about the ladies' prayer, which is a little different than the men's. And some people, they are trying to say that the men and women's salat is the same. Inshallah, one day we'll talk about that. That no, it's not the same. There's a difference, and this is according to hadith and according to the Sahaba and what they practiced. But anyway, so salat, if we were to say the hand, so you would say the feet is like this, and our back is like this, and our head is here. It's supposed to be a 90-degree angle when we pray, not like this, and not like this. Also, some people bend too much, and some people bend too less, and some people do it very quick. So it should be a 90-degree, and in this, there's a lot of warnings in hadith in regards to this. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the hadith is in Mu'jam Awsat of Tabrani, where Rasulullah said something very strange, ajib. He said, the worst of people, asba'u nasi sadaqatan alladhi yasriku min salatihi. He said the worst thief is the one who's a thief in his prayer. Come on, it's prayer, man. There's nothing to steal in prayer. And then to use a word like a thief, who would want to be a thief? And especially one praying, it's got no ta'aluk and no connection with stealing and thieving. So the Sahaba asked, كَيْفَ يَسِكُ مِنْ salati? Ya Rasulullah, what are you talking about? How does a person steal from his prayer? We don't get that. The system, it just doesn't match up. And Rasulullah then said, لَا يُتِمُّ رُكُوعَهَا وَلَا سُجُودَهَا. He's not completing his ruku, nor is he completing his sajda. Just a quick, just not even going down all the way. You get the people that just, and then right back up. Laziness, kaslan, ghaflat. It's just heedlessness. we're not paying attention to what we're supposed to do. And ruku is something, there's a great struggle in too. I mean, to bend the back, you keep in that position for a little while, it becomes an exercise. So we just get very lazy. The shaitan whispers to us, and we just want to do a half job and not do it correctly. And this is something that is a great detrimental effect to our prayer. Even on completion of the ruku, the bowing aspect of it, when we're bowing our backs, when we come back up, right, when we're coming up from ruku, we should take special care in making sure that our backs are straight then when we stand. And there is a pause before we continue to the next posture of prayer. So it's not like this. Some people, they're making ruku, and then when they're coming up, they just head a little bit, and then they go right down, which is completely wrong and can invalidate the prayer. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has mentioned a very scary hadith, which is in Musnad Ahmad, where Rasulullah said, "La yanzuru Allah ila salati rajulin la yuqimu sulbahu bayna ruku'ihi wa sujudi." The person, Allah Ta'ala will not look at that person's prayer, will not even pay attention to that person's prayer, who does not straighten his back between ruku and between sajda. That would mean what we call qawma, a small standing, when we do our ruku, and then we come up and we stand. Sami Allahu liman hamida. Now this, it can't be Sami Allahu liman hamida and then go right down, go to sajda. No, that's not the right way. Ta'dilu salat, which is farz, we are supposed to make sure that every single, we'll do the hadith inshallah, every single, posture of our prayer is done in a relaxing and very, a complete method and complete way. So a person, Sami Allahu liman hamida, back is supposed to be straight. Even there's du'as, Rabbana wa lakal hamd, or Rabbana lakal hamd, or Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd, hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi. We should stand up. Most people don't do it. Sami Rabbana lakal hamd, and they go right back down. And it's kind of like synchronized and simultaneous just movement like a snake. And there's no stop. There's stoppage. It's not synchronized. It's not simultaneous. There's pauses between each posture. So Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana wa lakal hamd, hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi. Then Allahu Akbar. That's the way it's supposed to be done. And this is what Nabi I'm talking about, that in qawma, which is one is qiyam, standing, one is qawma, which means a small standing that is after ruku. The back has to be straight. If the back isn't straight and a person does it in a very lazy way and just taking shortcuts, la yanzurullah ila salati. Allah Ta'ala does not look at the salah of that person, doesn't pay attention. If he's not looking at it, not paying attention to it, then obviously we can see that it's not going to be valid. And between the sajda also, which we call jalsa, where a person makes sajda, we'll talk about it later on. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, says 3 times, he does his prostration, and then he comes up, and Allahu Akbar, and then sometimes we don't say nothing, and then we just say Allahu Akbar again. And what we're supposed to do is make the dhikr of Allah Ta'ala and a dua. And what do we say there? Rabbik fidli warhamni wa'afini wahdini warzuqni. And what du'as these are? Subhanallah. Du'as that we need. Rabbik fidli, forgive me. Rabbik fidli wa'afini, give me easiness in this world. Wahdini, give me guidance. Warzuqni, give me money also. In the salat, we're asking for the money also. Ya Allah, give me the rizq. Who doesn't want rizq? Who doesn't want good health? Who doesn't want guidance? Who doesn't want to be forgiven? Just the dua that's made between the two sajdas. Well, if that dua is accepted, that would suffice, inshallah, for a person in this world and the hereafter. Just that one dua in between. It's what everybody wants. Allah, give me forgiveness, give me easiness, give me guidance, and give me the cash. Provide for me. Warzuqni. Allah Ta'ala, these are the beautiful du'as that we should make. Well, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah. In South Africa, they used to say, kiss the ground, up and down, kiss the ground, back to town. They have a way of rhyming in South Africa. They like to rhyme a lot. So they would say, salat shouldn't be up and down, kiss the ground, back to town. No, it shouldn't be like that. Now we move to the sajda, the actual prostration. And just like we said, qiyam, many ulama, and that was Abu Hanifa, says that qiyam is the most virtuous of all, standing is the most virtuous of all positions of the prayer. There are so many who say that the sajda, it is the best and most virtuous of all the positions of prayer, from the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is related in the Sahih Muslim, where أقرب ما يكون العبد من ربه وهو ساجد. The most closest that a servant can be to Allah wa ta'ala is when he's in prostration. When a person now has put his head on the floor and says, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. The dhikr that we say also, Allah, you are pure, the most high. I am impure, I am the most lowest. I am impure, I am the most lowest. This is the zenith of humility when a person goes down and prostrates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But, of course, you know, being humble, of course, we always say, a lot of people don't like to be humble. And man tawada'a rafa'ahu Allah, whoever is humble, Allah ta'ala raises them. And a person, this might be looked at as a mode or posture which is very, very disgracing to a person. But believe me, this is the most izzat and the most honorable position that a person's in. The sajda, you know, the greatest expression of belief in Allah Ta'ala, physical expression of belief in Allah Ta'ala, to put your head on the ground and to bow and prostrate to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. This is the zenith and the highest level of worship. That's why Nabi Sam said, Aqrabu, the most closest a person can get to Allah Ta'ala is when he's sajid, when he's prostrating to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Now that was basically the prayer in itself, and I left a lot of things out, at-tahiyyat and the sitting and the salam. I left a lot of things out, but I want to emphasize also that, and especially these days, because this is something lacking in our prayer also, and it could help our prayer very quickly if we bring this into our prayer, and that is the place of prayer. Where are we praying? A major part of establishment of prayer is praying our salat in jama'ah, in congregation, in the masjid. It's great ahmiyat, great importance. One is you can go to the corner of your house and pray, and this is mostly for the menfolk. The women, inshallah, don't have to go to the masjid. If they choose to, they can. But for us, just at any time when we want, with no discipline, maybe we're going to join, we're going to, Maghrib Salat, it comes in at 7:30, so I'm going to do my Asr at 7:25 and just sit there for 2 minutes, and then 7:30 I'll pray my Maghrib. We make our own schedule with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, Allah's deen is not supposed to, our day is supposed to be according to the deen of Allah ta'ala, not the deen according to our day. We don't now start doing things, according to our own whims and fancies. So the salat in the masjid is also extremely important. That's why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has mentioned, and I'll give you a prime example that should make us run to the masajid when we need to pray. And that's what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, As-salatul jama'ah afdalu min salatil fadh bi 27 daraja. This hadith is mutafakun alayh, meaning Bukhari and Muslim both have related it. And this is a salat, with jama'ah, which is going to give us 27 times more reward than if we prayed by ourselves. Now, I don't need to elaborate on this hadith. All I got to do is ask you a simple question. If there was a job offer out there which was multiplying your salary by 27 times, you'll make 27 times more than what you're doing at your regular job, would we take that job? I don't know. I don't need an answer for that. And I don't even got to answer that my own self. We would take it, of course we would. So, I know, we tangible. The money's there, we see it, and it's not the same. But for us to completely abandon the masjid, to not be going there for months on end, to completely disregard and not be, if not an essential part of our life, but at least a small part of our life. I'm not talking about the Jummah, the Friday. We're not such that we only pray on Sunday or we only pray on Saturday. Our prayer is 5 times a day, and actually 5 times a day in the masjid. Supposed to. This was the life of Rasulullah and Sahaba. They prayed in the masjid 5 times a day. If we have our jobs and we have excuses and we can't get to a masjid, masjid's far away, these type of things. It's not a Muslim country. Sometimes we don't have the masajid very close to us. We can't reach them. Different story. But now the adhan's going off, we hear it, we're not going, we've got no intention to go also. So this would apply to us. That, think about it. If you had, someone coming to you offering you 27 times more salary than what you, and we know our work, we never miss our job. We never miss our job. We get our salaries, we get our paycheck. But at the end of the day, is our jobs and our paycheck going to help us more in the hereafter, or is our salat? And I hope you're going to answer salat. For this reason, the Sahaba who were so mukhlis and so sincere, that's why the Quran talks about them. Awwal mukhatabin, the first people who Allah Ta'ala talks about in good ways is the Sahaba. They were never distracted from their prayer in the masjid and Jamaat. And what would distract them? The market area. Allah Ta'ala mentions, رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ وَلَا بَيْعٌ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَإِقَامِ الصَّلَاةِ. They were such men that they were not distracted from their prayers by any type of business, any type of buying and selling. When the adhan was called, they closed up their shops and they went to the masjid. That's why our great Ustad, Muhammad Rahman Azmi, the Sheikh al-Hadith of Darulum Azadville, and our teacher and our great Murshid and Sheikh, and may Allah Ta'ala give him a long life, he used to say very beautifully that if our prayer was like the tijara, if our prayer was like the businesses of the Sahaba, our prayers would definitely get accepted. Meaning, if we did business like the Sahaba, if we did salat like the Sahaba did business, our salat would be accepted. Because they abandoned their business once they needed, they did business. Here we see also, the Sahaba were not people who just sat around and didn't work and stuff like that. This ayat also shows us that the Sahaba were involved in business. They were entrepreneurs. They had businesses. It's known that the people of the Muhajirin, the people of Mecca, they were business people. They had sold fruits and vegetables and clothing and kapara and food, and they had businesses. And the people of the Ansar, the Medina, they were farmers. So they went out and worked. They did. It's not again. But when it was time to abandon it and come to the prayer, they did that also. They didn't waste their time. The frequenting of the masjid has been counted amongst a sign of faith. So we can just counteract it with an opposite meaning, that if we are not frequenting the masjid, this could be a sign of a very weak faith or possibly no faith at all. May Allah protect us. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has mentioned, the hadith is in Tirmidhi, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الرَّجُلَ يَتَعَاهَدُ الْمَسْجِدِ فَاشْهَدُوا لَهُ الْإِيمَانِ. When you see a person and he is habitual to coming to the masjid, back and forth, frequenting the masjid. He's there for Fajr, then Dhuhr, then Asr, then Maghrib. When the Salat is short, like it was just now in the winter time, and now we're coming on the summer where it's going to be a longer day, and it's a little bit easy for us to do the prayers because when we get home at night, we can get back to the masjid. When it's shorter, it's a little bit more harder and challenging. Sometimes you come for Dhuhr, after 2 or 3 hours, you got to get back for Maghrib. It's more challenging. You see this person coming back and forth to the masjid. So, فَاشْهَدُوا لَهُ الْإِيمَانِ. Nabi Sallam said, bear witness that that person has faith. He is a believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Nabi Sallam recited the ayat of Quran, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يَقُولُ إِنَّمَا يَعْمُرُ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ. Those people who frequent the masjid are those people who believe in Allah Ta'ala in the last day. This is the shahadat of Allah Ta'ala in the Quran. Therefore, since Allah Ta'ala has attested and said, if you're frequenting the masjid, that means you believe in me, you also can bear witness and say that this guy believes in Allah Ta'ala. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave great importance to frequenting the masjid. There's an ayat of Quran which we read every morning in Surah Yasin. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُمْ. Allah Ta'ala says, we are the ones who give life to the dead. And we are the ones who will write down what you put forward and whatever you left behind. Athar. And athar can have two meanings. Athar can be those deeds that you did that after you pass away, the effects of those you will still get when you're in your grave. So you get that type of reward which you call the sadaqatun jariyah, and those amal, those deeds which are enduring. For example, you build a masjid. After you die, everyone who goes to that masjid is going to get benefit. Some say athar means this. Athar could also mean footsteps. Also mean footsteps. And there's a hadith about a tribe called Banu Salima. And Banu Salima, they used to frequent the masjid a lot. But they lived a little far away. But they frequented them. They were very punctual in prayers. And a plot had opened up in front of the masjid of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they wanted to buy that plot. They would be closer to the masjid. But since they were closer to the masjid, their footsteps to the masjid would be less. They'd be right in front of the masjid. And they were frequenting the masjid and taking their walks to the masjid and getting there on time already, even though they were living a little far away. So when Nabi Islam, Prophet Muhammad, heard about this, he saw the members of that tribe, Banu Salima, coming in. And then Nabi Islam told them and looked at them and said, Diyarakum, diyarakum, tuktabu atharakum, diyarakum, diyarakum, tuktabu atharakum. O Banu Salima, keep your houses, keep your houses. Your footsteps, as Allah Ta'ala said, ma qaddamu wa atharakum. We're writing that down. Nabi Islam said, your footsteps are being counted. Keep your houses over there. Your footsteps are being counted. Meaning, it's better that you take that walk and each footstep, Allah Ta'ala is giving the rewards to you. That is going to be rewarded by Allah Ta'ala. If you get closer, okay, you'll be punctual. You probably get there even earlier. But those footsteps that you used to take to get to the masjid, you're going to lose out on that. So that's why Nabi Sallallahu told Ibn Salima, keep your houses, don't buy that plot. You're punctual already. Get those footsteps in. And last but not least, not in regards to prayer, we'll talk more about prayer, about devotion and prayer, but a stern warning in the life of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If we're going to say that, the masjid, it doesn't really mean that much. It's not important. I'm doing my 5 prayer. The Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the Quran has been called Rahmatul lil Alameen. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. A mercy for mankind. Despite being called this mercy, Rasulullah has warned those people who don't come to the masjid without an excuse. The hadith is mashhur and sahih hadith, where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ. I swear by he who my soul is in his hand. لَقَدْ هَمَمْتُ أَنْ آمُرَ بِحَطَبٍ فَيُحْطَبٍ. I wanted to now order some people to gather some wood. ثُمَّ آمُرُ بِالصَّلَاةِ. And then I'll order the people to pray. فَيُؤَذِّنُ لَهَا. And then the mu'adhin will give the adhan. ثُمَّ آمُرَ رَجُلًا. Then I'll order a person, فَيَؤُمُ النَّاسِ, and he will lead the prayer. I won't lead the prayer. ثُمَّ أُخَالِفَ إِلَى رِجَالٍ فَأُحَرِّقَ عَلَيْهِمْ بُيُوتَهُ. Then, while he is leading the prayer, and the Muslims are praying, I will go out, and I will go amongst the houses, and I will see who's now not praying. And I want to burn their houses down. Obviously, this was not Nabi Sallam going to do this. Don't think that now this hadith means that Nabi Sallam wanted to burn and kill people. No. You know, we say it in English sometimes. If you do that again, I'll kill you. If you do that again, I'll kill you. Well, you're not going to kill him. Your son, it's your friend, your brother. But Nabi Sallam is emphasizing that this is so important and it makes me so mad. Prophet Muhammad is saying, it makes me so mad that those people are just staying back and not joining the prayer. I want to catch them in their houses. And I'm going to burn their houses down while they may be in it. While they may be in it. But of course, the Prophet Muhammad never did this. He would never do it. And this hadith we say, Bayani, yani sabili taghlith. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was speaking in a very stern manner. And this is known. We talk like this as teachers and as imams and as orators and you know, this is to drive your point home. You will emphasize and talk about something which would not even happen in a far-fetched situation. So the place of prayer is so important. The prayer when we are in congregation is a much easier prayer to concentrate. In regards to concentration and devotion and prayer, inshallah, we'll finish off that next week in our tafsir. We'll talk about that, devotion and prayer, which is one of the most important questions and that you might be lurking in your heart. How do I concentrate in prayer? Inshallah, we're going to talk about that next week. Jazakumullah khair. Wa akhu da'wana alhamdulillah bil alamin.